Criminal behavior. Characteristics. Types of crime. Farr and Gibbons suggest 7 categories for crime. Property predatory, property fraudulent, interpersonal violence general, interpersonal violence sexual, folk, mundane. Property predatory are attempting, taking one's property, for example burglary. Interpersonal violence general are actions that threaten to or cause harm to others, for example murder. Normality of criminal behavior. Munsey and McLaughlin said criminal behavior is so common that if the average person in the UK were convicted once for each type of crime they committed, they would spend 6 years in jail. Who is a criminal? A crime is any act that violates the law as determined by the state. Some acts may be seen as criminal in some places and not others, and in the past and not now, for example homosexuality. Is criminal behavior always wrong? Nelson Mandela was arrested for conspiracy to overthrow the government, which is a serious crime. However, we view his acts as heroic and not criminal. As criminal behavior is not one type of behavior, it is hard to characterize. Biological. Inherited criminality. Description. Genetic factors. One or more genes predispose an individual to criminal behavior. Rain studied delinquent behavior in twins and found 52% concordance in MZ twins and 21% in DZ twins. Searching for candidate genes. 2 genes have been especially linked to criminal behavior. These are MA and CDH13. Tiahonen reviewed results from a longitudinal study and found low MA and CDH13 activity in 900 offenders. Brunner investigated a Dutch family of criminals who committed violent crimes such as rape, and found low levels of MA. Diathesis stress. Epigenetics. Genes can be switched on and off, which in turn have been affected by environmental factors. Caspi found that 12% of men with low MA experienced maltreatment but were responsible for 44% of violent crimes. Differences in the brain. Rain found reduced functioning in the prefrontal cortex of murderers and violent individuals, which is associated with impulsiveness and loss of control. Seo found that low levels of serotonin predispose individuals to impulsive aggression and criminal behavior. Biological. Inherited criminality evaluation. Support. Crow found that adopted children whose biological parent was a criminal had a 38% greater risk of having a criminal record by the age of 18. Refute. This explanation is determinist. Research by Tiahonen suggests that defective genes makes someone 13 times more likely to commit a crime, but not everyone with the genes become a criminal. Support. May be hard for some individuals to avoid crime due to biology and environmental factors. Therefore this determinist explanation can't be ruled out. Refute. Findlay suggests that crime is not a natural category. People have created it along with its many different types. Therefore it's hard to argue that such a behavior can simply be explained in terms of genetics and environmental interactions. Refute. Harmon found that 8.5% of the US population have had a brain injury, compared to 60% of the population in US prisons. Therefore, brain differences may be due to nature rather than nurture. Biological. Role of the amygdala. Description. Structure and function of the amygdala. The amygdala was first linked to criminal behavior by Papez and later by McLean. It is highly connected as it is linked to the hypothalamus, prefrontal cortex, etc. Therefore, it has a widespread influence on brain function, and has an impact on our emotions and social interactions. The main role of the amygdala is to assess and respond to environmental threats. This suggests its importance in determining aggressive behavior. Amygdala and aggression. Coccaro conducted a study on people with IDA as they tend to experience outbursts of reactive aggression. Using fMRI scans, he found that they had high levels of amygdala activity when they viewed angry faces. Amygdala and fear conditioning. Go suggests that we learn to inhibit aggressive behavior through fear conditioning, as we are taught it would lead to punishments. However, the dysfunction of the amygdala means that a child can't identify social cues that indicate threat, and therefore doesn't link punishment to their aggressive behavior. This disrupts fear conditioning and leads to fearless, over-aggressive and antisocial behavior. Biological role of the amygdala evaluation. Support. Gospick's ultimatum game. He offered to split money in an unfair way with his participants. It was suggested that rejection of an offer was a sign of aggression. Whilst playing the game, participants underwent fMRI scans. It was found that on rejection of an unfair offer, amygdala activity was heightened and quicker. Refute. The amygdala functions with the orbital frontal cortex, OFC. Rain studied murderers who experienced reactive aggression, and found increased amygdala activity and decreased activity in the prefrontal cortex, where the OFC is situated. This suggests the complexity of criminal behavior. Support. Pardini investigated 56 men who experienced aggressive behavior since childhood. Using fMRI scans, he found that high levels of aggression over a 20-year period was associated with lower amygdala volumes. Refute. Damage to the amygdala affects the ability to process fear normally, which may lead to reduced empathy. Therefore, aggressive behavior is more likely but not inevitable. Refute. Criminal behavior depends on other biological and environmental factors, therefore a more complex explanation is needed. Individual differences. Eysenck's criminal personality description. Theory of personality. There are three aspects of Eysenck's personality. These are extraversion, neuroticism and psychoticism. Extroverts are outgoing, have positive emotions and get bored easily. Neurotics experience negative emotional states rather than positive. Psychotics are aggressive, impulsive and lack empathy. Biological basis. Eysenck suggested that extraversion is associated with the overall level of arousal in a person's nervous system. Extroverts are more likely to seek external stimulation to increase cortical arousal. Neuroticism is associated with levels of stability. Neurotics are slightly unstable and are therefore easily upset. Psychoticism is related to high levels of testosterone. Men are more likely to be at this end of the spectrum. Link to criminal behavior. Extroverts seek more arousal, so engage in dangerous activities. Neurotics are unstable, so are more likely to overreact to situations of threat. Psychotics lack empathy. People high in extraversion and psychoticism are less easily conditioned, therefore they don't learn to avoid antisocial behavior. Individual differences. Eysenck's criminal personality evaluation. Support. Dunlop suggested that both extraversion and psychoticism, as well as Lie scales, were good indicators of criminal behavior. Refute. The participants were all students and delinquency was an assessment of minor offenses, so the study cannot be generalized. Refute. The personality test is a questionnaire, which therefore leads to socially desirable responses. Support. This is countered by the use of Lie scales. For example, a person who consistently answers yes is probably being dishonest, tending towards socially desirable answers. Their data is discarded. Refute. Personality is not consistent. Individual differences. Cognitive factors description. Cognitive distortions. Form of irrational thinking. A person's perception of events is wrong but they think it's accurate. There are two types: hostile attribution bias and minimalization. Hostile attribution bias is when someone observes actions and makes an inference about what it might mean, but thinking the worst. Minimalization helps an individual accept the consequences of their behavior and leads to reduced negative emotions. Levels of moral reasoning. Kohlberg said that there are three levels of moral reasoning: pre-conventional, conventional and post-conventional. pre-conventional is accepting the rules of authority figures and judging actions by their consequences. Conventional is when individuals continue to believe that conformity to social rules is desirable, but this is not out of self-interest. Post-conventional is when individuals move beyond unquestioning compliance to the norms of the social system. Hollins suggests that most criminals are likely to be at the pre-conventional level. Individual differences. Cognitive factors evaluation. Support. Schoenberg and Justi showed emotionally ambiguous faces to 55 violent offenders and found that they interpreted any expression of anger as aggression. Therefore, misinterpretation of nonverbal cues may partly explain criminal behavior. Refute. Kohlberg's theory of moral reasoning was based only on male samples. Gulligan suggests that because of this, the theory is based on male perspective, which is one of justice rather than caring. Support. Chen and Howitt produced a test based on Kohlberg's theory. They found that the offenders who showed more advanced reasoning were less likely to be involved in violent crimes. Refute. Kohlberg's theory was focused on moral thinking rather than behavior. Keeps and Denton suggest that moral principles are only one factor in moral behavior, and this may be overridden by more practical principles. Support. Kennedy and Grubin found support for minimalization. It was found that sex offenders' account of their crimes often downplay their behavior. Social. Differential association theory description. Sutherland suggested that offending behavior can be explained entirely in terms of social learning, for example imitation. The varying frequency with people who have positive or negative attitudes towards crime influences your attitudes towards crime. He suggested that attitudes towards crime, which type of crimes are desirable and specific types of crimes can all be learned. It is mainly learned from intimate personal groups, for example family, and whether the wider neighborhood supports or opposes crime determines whether there is a high or low level of crime in an area. Sutherland suggests that the frequency, length and personal meaning of a person will determine their degree of influence. He proposed 9 key principles that explain differential association. For example, criminal behavior is learned rather than inherited. And the learning is directional, either for or against crime. Social. Differential association theory evaluation. Support. Akers found that the most important influence in drinking and drug offenses was from peers. Differential association, differential reinforcement and imitation combined accounted for 68% variation in marijuana use and 55% in alcohol use. Refute. Data collected is correlational, therefore it's unclear whether criminals seek out other criminals to be their peers or whether they influence their peers to be criminals. Cox also suggests that theory is untestable as it is difficult to measure strength of association. Support. This theory has important implications in the real world as learning environments can be changed to reduce criminal activity. Refute. Social learning influences are confined to smaller, less violent crimes. Therefore, it's only a partial account of offending behavior. Refute. Can't explain why most offenses are committed by younger people. Newburn found that 40% of offenses were committed by people under 21. However, other explanation, for example Eysenck's personality, can in terms of desire for risk-taking. Social. Gender socialization description. Socialization is the process by which we learn norms and skills to function in society. Sutherland suggests that during socialization, boys are encouraged to be risk-takers and tough, whereas girls are not. This leads to more young men becoming criminals as they have both the inclination and opportunity to commit crime. The social learning theory suggests that we learn about our gender behaviors through observation and imitation of role models. For girls it's their mother and for boys it's their father. Cohen suggests that this is a more difficult process for males as they traditionally have less access to their fathers and rebel against socialization offered by their mothers. They then seek out all male peer groups where aggressive behavior may be rewarded. Patriarchal societies hold greater control over women. Hyde-Zahn suggests that women are controlled at home, work and in public. As adults, women have less opportunity to commit crime due to greater time and movement restrictions placed on them by their domestic roles. Social. Gender socialization evaluation. Support. Police, magistrates and judges all tend to be male. Pollack suggests that men in the criminal justice system tend to have a protective attitude towards women. And therefore, women are less likely to be charged with a crime. Therefore, it may be the gender of the criminal justice system which may be the reason women are said to commit less crimes. Refute. Testosterone is linked to aggressive behavior. Dabbs found that 10 out of 11 inmates with high levels of testosterone committed violent crimes. This suggests biological influences should not be ignored. Support. Carlin found that when a woman was perceived as a good mother, she was likely to be imprisoned. This suggests that it's the character of the women, in terms of gender roles, rather than the severity of the crime that determines the sentence carried out. Refute. Women have lower levels of testosterone and higher levels of estradiol, which promotes empathy. Erickson found that men with alcohol-related aggression had a negative correlation between estradiol levels and testosterone-related physical, violent aggression. Therefore, male hormones promote criminal behavior and female hormones reduce it.